The Middle Ages were a time of towering cathedrals, fierce knights, and epic tales of heroism. But when it came to medicine, things took a turn for the bizarre. If you were unlucky enough to fall ill during this period, chances are your doctor would prescribe something that sounds more like a witch's recipe than a medical treatment. Medieval medicine was a strange mix of superstition, religion, and a shaky understanding of how the human body worked. While some of their ideas laid the groundwork for modern medicine, others were downright weird, even terrifying. Imagine waking up with a fever in a cold, damp hut somewhere in medieval Europe. There were no thermometers, no antibiotics, and certainly no hospitals like we know them today. Instead, your fate would be handed over to someone who may or may not have ever seen a real anatomy chart, but who definitely believed your sickness had something to do with your humors being out of balance. The body, according to medieval belief, was controlled by 4 fluids or humors: blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. If you were sick, it meant one of these was in excess, and it had to be purged. Leeches were a go-to solution for many ailments. Doctors believed that removing blood would restore balance to your system, so they placed wriggling leeches on your skin and let them suck out your blood. If leeches were unavailable, they'd just slice open a vein and let it pour. This process, known as bloodletting, was used for everything from headaches to fevers to the common cold. It didn't matter what was wrong with you. Losing blood was almost always the answer, but that was just the beginning. If you had a toothache, you might be told it was caused by tiny invisible worms burrowing into your teeth. This idea wasn't completely medieval. It had been floating around since ancient times, but medieval practitioners loved it. To drive the worms out, they might burn herbs like henbane and direct the smoke into your mouth, hoping the worms would flee. If that didn't work, your next option was to have the offending tooth yanked out without anesthesia, of course. Some cures were not only weird, but genuinely revolting. Take, for example, the use of animal dung. In medieval England, sheep droppings were mashed into a paste and applied to wounds. Pig manure was another favorite. Supposedly, it helped heal cuts and bruises. In reality, it probably caused more infections than it cured. But if the alternative was doing nothing, people were willing to try just about anything. Urine also played a surprisingly large role in medieval medicine. Physicians would examine the color, smell, and even taste of a patient's urine to diagnose diseases. Charts were drawn up comparing different shades of yellow and brown to different ailments. Some doctors took it a step further and prescribed drinking one's own urine as a cure for specific diseases. While this might sound shocking today, back then it was considered a legitimate form of treatment. Another curious cure involved wearing amulets or charms, especially ones made from animals or even human remains. If you suffered from epilepsy, for example, a popular cure was to carry a piece of a human skull in your pocket. Better yet, you could drink a powder made from crushed bones. These practices were rooted in the belief that some essence of life force remained in the remains of the dead, and that it could be transferred to the living. Religion was deeply entangled with medicine. People believed that sickness was often a punishment from God, either for personal sin or as a test of faith. Because of this, many cures involved prayer, fasting, and pilgrimage. If you were rich, you might donate money to a monastery and ask the monks to pray for you. If you were poor, you'd light candles or crawl on your knees to a holy shrine. In some cases, people believed that touching a relic, a bone, a cloth, or even a fingernail from a saint could heal them. The cure for epilepsy, also known as the falling sickness, could be particularly strange. Some medieval doctors recommended drinking the blood of a freshly killed gladiator or criminal. While gladiators had long disappeared by the Middle Ages, the belief persisted that the sudden, violent death of a person released powerful energies that could be harnessed. In other cases, powdered human skull, known as mumia, was prescribed not just for epilepsy, but also for headaches and other neurological problems. This gruesome remedy became so popular that grave robbing became a profitable business. Let's not forget the use of dead animals. A roasted mouse was considered a good treatment for whooping cough. For earaches, it was common to squeeze the juice of crushed earthworms or snails into the ear canal. Another recipe for baldness involved boiling a mixture of bear grease and ashes of burnt bees and rubbing it on the scalp. If that didn't bring your hair back, nothing would. Women had their own set of bizarre remedies. For fertility issues, one cure involved drinking a potion made from powdered deer antler mixed with milk. To ease labor pains, some women were told to sit on toads wrapped in linen. Others were instructed to hold a piece of iron in their mouths during childbirth, believing it would attract evil spirits away from the baby. Astrology played a massive role in medieval medicine as well. Physicians consulted the stars before making a diagnosis or performing surgery. Each zodiac sign was believed to rule over a different part of the body. Aries governed the head, Taurus the neck, and so on. If your horoscope said that Mars was ascendant, it might not be the best time to lance a boil or set a broken bone. The plague brought out the weirdest cures of all. When the Black Death swept through Europe, killing millions, people were desperate for anything that worked. Some carried sweet-smelling herbs or flowers in their pockets to ward off the disease, thinking bad smells caused illness. Others wore masks with long beaks filled with spices and herbs. Some people believed that whipping themselves in public would appease God's anger and stop the spread of the plague. Others simply fled, leaving behind their homes, families, and communities in the hope of escaping death. Not all medieval medicine was superstition and horror. Some remedies actually worked, though not always for the reasons people thought. Honey was used to treat wounds, and it genuinely has antibacterial properties. Garlic was a common treatment for infections and even digestive issues, and we now know it contains compounds that can fight bacteria. Herbal remedies like willow bark for pain and fever were early forms of what would later become aspirin. But these sensible cures were often buried beneath layers of magical thinking and mysticism. Medieval people didn't separate medicine from magic or science from religion. They lived in a world where everything was connected: stars, spirits, body fluids, divine will, and herbal teas. When a person got sick, the whole universe was examined for a cure. Doctors themselves weren't exactly the most reliable. The majority of medical practitioners were barbers, monks, or folk healers with no formal training. Universities taught medicine based on ancient Greek texts, but there was little opportunity for hands-on practice. Surgery, considered a low profession, was left to barbers, who cut hair and performed amputations with the same knives. Pain relief was minimal, and sanitation was practically non-existent. Despite this, people in the Middle Ages did their best with what they had. Their remedies may seem strange or even laughable now, but they were born from centuries of observation, desperation, and trial and error. It's easy to mock the idea of using a frog tied around your throat to cure a sore throat. But when that's all you've got, a frog might seem worth trying. Ultimately, the weirdest cures from the Middle Ages remind us of how far we've come in understanding the human body and disease. But they also highlight something universal: our deep need to find meaning in suffering and to believe that healing is possible, even if it comes from the most unexpected sources. Whether it's powdered skulls, toad-stuffed linen, or a prayer whispered in a candlelit chapel, every cure tells a story not just of illness, but of hope. And hope, no matter the century, is one of the strongest medicines of all. Thanks for joining us on this strange and fascinating journey through the world of medieval medicine. It's almost hard to believe that people once believed roasted mice, snail juice, and powdered skulls could cure what ailed them. But behind every bizarre remedy was a very human fear of illness and death, and a deep desire to find relief in a world that didn't have modern science. While many of these cures make us cringe today, they were rooted in the hope that healing was possible. Even if it came from something as strange as frog bandages or iron charms. If nothing else, these stories remind us of how far we've come and how much we take for granted when it comes to modern healthcare. The next time you pop an aspirin or schedule a checkup, think about the brave souls who came before us and trusted their lives to leeches and toads. If you enjoyed this dive into history's weirdest cures, don't forget to like the video. Leave us a comment with your favorite strange remedy, and subscribe for more stories that bring the past to life in the most unexpected ways. Until next time, stay curious, stay healthy, and be glad you live in the 21st century.